What's up, you guys? It's Simon with Simon Says Finance, where on my channel I hope to share with you my 2 cents on some key financial topics that I believe will help you to become more knowledgeable and confident in handling your own personal finances.
I like
finance.
I do not know why.
So for today's video, we're going to discuss the top 5 money traps to avoid in your 20s. So a lot of people like to say that your 20s are your prime years of your life and that you should YOLO each day and have the most fun as you can no matter what. Now, I'm all for having fun, but here's an important fact to be aware of. Every $1 invested in a 401k at the age of 20 with a 10% return will grow to be $544 at retirement age. Now take the same $1 and invest it at age 30 and you will find that it will go down to $203 at retirement age, which is still good, but it's less than half of the value at the dollar invested at age 20. Now take that same $1 and invest it at age 50 and it results in only $22 by the time you retire, which is why it becomes exponentially harder to retire comfortably the longer you wait to invest. For this reason, I like to view your 20s not as your prime years, but rather your primary years that are going to prepare you to the rest of your life to do the things that you always wanted to do in the future. And I know in your 20s, money is usually pretty scarce because you're just getting started. So it becomes extra important to maximize every dollar that we have, so to not only have fun, but also to invest it in your future and to not fall into one of these money traps at such a young age. And if at any time throughout this video you have any kind of questions for your particular situation, make sure to comment down below and I'd be more than happy to answer your questions. And if you yourself have fallen into one of these money traps, make sure to comment down below which one so we can all be aware which ones to avoid the most. And finally, if you get any kind of value from this video, make sure to hit that thumbs up button and make sure to share it with somebody that you know that's also in their 20s so they can avoid these money traps. And just as a quick disclaimer,
I'm not a certified financial advisor, I'm just some guy on YouTube giving his opinion on certain financial topics, and it's up to you to make your own decisions on your own personal finances.
now with all that said,
Let's get ready to rumble!
now money trap number 1 that we're going to talk about today, that I'm sure we all know, is credit card debt. Now I know turning 20 can be very exciting for many of us because you probably just went out to college or you just moved out, so you don't have your mom's watch why monitoring all your spending. But without mom's watch why to stop us, and with it being so easy to just add something to the cart on Amazon, it becomes very easy to overspend with a credit card. Now if you've seen some of my other videos on my channel, you'll notice that I always mention that it's important to start building your credit as soon as possible with a credit card. But never in any of those videos do I mention that we should hold a balance every month and pay interest. Because having credit card debt is by far one of the worst financial traps that we can fall into in our 20s. And a study conducted in 2019 by Experian showed that the average American has $6,194 in credit card debt. And the average interest rate on these credit cards is 16.97%. What this means, if you try to pay this balance with just $200 a month, which is higher than the minimum payment, it would actually take you 48 months to pay it off, and you would also be paying an additional $2,012 in just interest. And that number is based off a 16.97% interest rate. And if you're like most 20-year-olds trying to build their credit from scratch, you probably got approved for a credit card that's a much higher interest rate, something closer to 29%. And when it comes to credit card usage, this is one of those topics that I completely agree with Dave Ramsey in the fact that you should never, ever, ever, ever,
don't
ever have credit card debt at any age. Because if you go to the mall and you see a shirt that you really like and it says that it's 30% off, willingly paying credit card interest is equivalent to taking that shirt, going to the cashier and say, hey, I don't want 30% off of this shirt. I want to buy this at full price because I want to spend more money. And I would like to assume that all of us can agree that
That's stupid!
And that's why it's important that if you have credit card debt, it's important to kill that as soon as possible before you invest in your 401k, your Roth IRA, your stocks, or your Bitcoin. Because paying off a high credit card balance is an automatic 29% guaranteed rate of return back to your net worth, as opposed to if you invest in a mutual fund or a stock, you probably only get about 10% on your return on your investment. And even Warren Buffett, who is known by many to be the greatest investor of all time, only averages about 20% when it comes to year-over-year return on investment. And unless you're Warren Buffett, who says he spends about 8 hours a day reading financial statements, more than likely you're probably not going to beat his rate of return, let alone a credit card rate of return on a year-to-year basis. Thus, if you have credit card debt, paying it off and removing that financial burden from your name is going to give you the greatest impact on your financial net worth over time. Because it's going to be hard to fill up your financial bucket when you have credit card interest constantly eating up your savings each and every month. So if you can promise yourself and your future self that you'll always pay your credit card balance in full each and every month, you can avoid this money trap in your 20s. Now, money trap number 2 is excessive student loans. Now hear me out in this situation because I know many of us at this age wanted to improve our financial situation by actually going to college. And while I do agree that going to college was very beneficial to me, there's also many ways to go to college and still get a good education without putting yourself in a financial hole that you're going to have to somehow get yourself out of 10 plus years afterwards by paying all this student debt. According to the Federal Reserve, the average student today has $32,731 in student loans, which is an increase for over 20% from 2015. And with the average student loan interest rate ranging from 5.8 for the undergraduate and 7.8 for the Parent Plus loans, this debt can quickly get out of hand and paralyze your growth before you even get started.
Another paralyzer! Say goodnight, Floppy.
And that is a shame because that's the debt that we young Americans acquire in the pursuit of the American dream. But unfortunately, many of us weren't warned about the implications of student loan debt if we went to college the wrong way. But that's why we're watching this video, to help gain the knowledge so that we can prevent this from happening to us as well as our family and our friends. Because say you're the typical college student and you don't have the cash to pay for your education all up front. So how can we go about taking out student loans so we can do so responsibly so that we can make it a financial investment as opposed to a financial burden? And with like any investment, we have to analyze the ROI, or the return on investment, in order to make a sound decision on whether or not it's worth putting your money into. So the number one thing you're going to want to find out in terms of return on investment for a particular degree is to look up what that career choice is going to pay you once you graduate. So many of my fellow classmates that went to college with me would try to go to college and get a degree that had no value in the real job market. But instead try to use the excuse of it's an investment in order to justify the reasoning to going to private school in order to get a degree in left-handed underwater basket weaving.
It's the final countdown. The final countdown.
And although I'm sure that degree can show you how to make some killer underwater baskets, I don't think you're going to be able to make that much money in today's market with that skill set. And I'm sorry to all my left-handed underwater basket weavers out there, but if you got a 4-year degree from a private school that you racked up $200,000 in student loan debt, but now you can't get a job and now you're working at Starbucks making $30,000 a year, that just shows that this was not a good investment. But to give you guys some general ideas of which degrees to choose from that have the highest return on investment, you're pretty much going to want to stick to the STEM fields. And by STEM, I mean science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And I'd also add in healthcare in there for some positions such as nurses. And if you stick to healthcare or one of these STEM fields, you're pretty much going to have a good fuzzy feeling that you're probably going to have the return on investment that you're looking for in your degree. But if you're outside one of these STEM fields, you're going to want to be extra diligent in determining the return on investment on this degree field to see if it's worth it for you financially. So now an example. Say you want to be a nurse in Texas, which is a common career path that is outside of the STEM field. The median nurse salary in America today is $75,330. If you decide to get your nursing degree at a private school such as TCU in Fort Worth, Texas, the tuition there is currently $49,250 per year. And for 4 years, that would be a total of $197,000 in costs if you took a student loan for all of it. And that would mean your return on investment would be calculated by dividing your expected income of $75,330 by the $197,000 cost. So your return on investment would be 30% per year before taxes, which means you'll be able to pay off this student loan in about 3 to 4 years if you use your entire income in order to pay off the student loan. Now, if you got that same degree and decide to do your basics at a community college such as Temple College in Texas for the first 2 years with a tuition cost of $13,896 a year, and then transfer into an in-state university for 2 years like the University of Texas, which has a cost of $30,076 a year. If you took out a student loan for the entire 4 years using this method, your student loan total would be $87,944, which if you make the average nurse salary of $75,330, your return on investment would be 85.6%, which is double the return on investment from the private school for the same nursing degree. Now for another example to show you how a degree can turn into a bad return on investment. Say you got a degree in hotel and tourism management from the University of New York. That degree has an expected salary of $24,470 and a tuition cost of $56,500 a year. That would result in a total of 4-year cost for that degree to be $226,000. And with the average American salary of a person without a college degree being $30,500, What this means is that you'll be forced to work outside of your degree field in order to make the same amount of money as someone without a degree. And this, unfortunately, is a reality for many of us that had to learn this lesson the hard way. I unfortunately know a few people that had to work at places such as Starbucks after they got a degree because Starbucks ended up paying more than the career fields that they chose. And I feel all of this is counterproductive to the whole reason of why we went to college in the first place and decided to put up with all those exams and all those assignments and being away from family and paying all that money to go to college just so that we get a job that pays less than someone that never had to go to college in the first place. Not to mention the 4 years of opportunity cost that we lost by going to college as opposed to starting our career right out of high school. Now, a good rule of thumb that I've used in the past that I feel is going to keep you safe when it comes to student loans is going to get a degree and go to a college that's going to allow you to not rack up more than 50% in terms of student loans that way you would have expected in your first year's annual salary. For example, say you want to become a teacher and the average salary is $39,000 a year and you want to go get a degree in education. It wouldn't be wise to go to a private school with no scholarship expecting to get $200,000 in student loan debt. Instead, it would be smarter for you to go to a community college and work part-time. That way you can graduate with less than $20,000 in student loan debt while you're making $39,000 a year, and it makes it much more manageable for you to pay it off quickly. And this rule of thumb also works for those guys that require more education to get their career going, such as a doctor or a lawyer. For example, if you're planning on becoming a plastic surgeon with making $500,000 a year, your goal should be to graduate with less than $250,000 in debt by either use of scholarships, going to a community college, or working part-time. And a big reason why this rule of thumb is so important to follow when it comes to staying under 50% of your first year's annual income is when it comes to buying your first home. Because one of the key decisions that a bank uses in order to qualify you for a house is your debt to income ratio. And it would really suck to get denied by the bank for your dream home all because your student loan debt was too high in relationship to your income. But as long as you follow this guideline and keeping your student loans below 50% of what your expected first year's salary, you should still be in the green and you should be able to avoid this money trap. So for money trap number 3 is buying a new car before investing. Now don't get me wrong, I love admiring the new F-350 or the new Corvette that's sitting at the grocery parking lot just like any other guy. And there's nothing wrong with buying yourself the nicest brand new car as long as you're in the right place financially to do so. The trap is when we trick ourselves into thinking that we can afford a very nice car just because we can manipulate the financing to make the payments low and manageable. First, we'll discuss some basic facts that come with buying a new car. Then I'm going to go into a personal story to help explain to you why buying a new car before you're ready can really derail your financial future. So the average car payment in America today is $609 a month, with the average loan outstanding is 69.5 months, which is over 5 years and 9 months. Now compare this with an article by CNBC stating that the average length of ownership for a car being 79 months. So what this means is that the average American only goes about 10 months without a car payment before they go in and buy a whole new car and start the whole cycle again. To put that into perspective, if you put that same money from a new car payment into a 401k starting at the age of 20, until you retire, you will have over $4 million. And with every $1 invested at age 20 having the potential to grow to $544 at retirement, every dollar invested in your 20s will matter more than they ever will later on in life. And this is not to mention the fact that it's no secret that when you go into a dealership and buy a brand new car and you drive it off the lot, that you automatically lose 10% of its value. And the car will continue to depreciate over time whether you drive it or not, all while the interest on that loan is going to continue to grow the longer you have it. And on average, after 5 years of owning a new vehicle, it's going to lose over 60% of its initial value. So buying a new car before you're financially ready to do so becomes a financial poop sandwich because your net worth takes a beating in multiple different ways. And out of all the things that I've mentioned to you already, these are still not the most costly things that are going to happen to your net worth by buying a new car before you're ready. The biggest net worth drain that's going to happen to you is the opportunity cost that you could have used that same money that you're putting into a new vehicle that's going down in value that you could have invested in something that's going to bring your net worth up over time. For example, you could have found the deal of a century on a new home, but if your debt to income ratio was annihilated by a large car note, you would miss out on buying a home until your car was paid off, thus missing out on all the benefits that come with home ownership. So now a personal example of mine to help explain to you why this can really mess you up. I actually almost fell into this money trap when I graduated college and I was considering buying the brand new M3 BMW. Because what do we all tell ourselves after we accomplish a big thing like going to college and graduating? You know, the whole self-talk of how I deserve to spoil myself and things like that. And so many of my other buddies that graduated college with me with an engineering degree also bought a brand new car, so there was peer pressure there and that certainly didn't help. I remember looking online for hours at glamorous YouTube videos of this car and calculating with my salary at the time of $40,000 a year that I could afford to buy it by extending the financing terms to 5 years. Everyone else was doing it, so it can't be wrong, right? Luckily, during that time, a university mentor I had at the time recommended me to read a book called Rich Dad Poor Dad for some extra credit in his class. And that book came at the right time and changed my entire perspective on how finances and money should be used. So instead of buying that new BMW, I did the exact opposite and bought a clunker, as Dave Ramsey likes to call it, for just $1,600 cash that I saved up working part-time in college. Here's a photo of it. It was a 2001 Nissan Sentra. The AC didn't work, half the doors didn't open, but it had about 100,000 miles and everything else worked great. Now, I definitely didn't get any compliments on this car, but I was so hyped every time I drove it because I knew this car was going to change my life financially, and it did. Instead of buying a $70,000 BMW like I wanted, I paid off my $32,000 in school loans that year and bought my first house. And it wasn't the nicest house, as you can see from this photo, but it was all I could afford at the time, and my plan was to fix it up on my free time and rent out the spare bedrooms as I worked on my first job. Everything went as planned, and I had to move due to my job about 2 years later. So I sold my house for about a $50,000 gain because of the remodel. Plus I made $1,000 a month renting out the 2 bedrooms to buddies, which not only paid my mortgage and utilities, but gave me an extra $100 in income each month. And since I had no student loans and no car payment and no bills because they were getting paid by my roommates, I was able to stack cash quickly for the down payment to buy a steal of a deal on 10 rental properties that skyrocketed my net worth to what it is today. And I was only able to close this deal because of the money I was able to save up over time. And all while still driving the clunker, I had no student loans, no car debt, 10 rental properties, all producing cash flow more than my current job today, and a few other properties and investments to my name, all by the age of 26. So why do I tell you this story? It's not to show off what I have or what I've acquired at such a young age or anything like that. It's to show you how small, deliberate decisions can change your entire financial situation when you do what is best for you and not what is best for the gram. And the reason I continue to tell this story to people is because all of this gain would have been lost if I had decided to buy that BMW when I was 23 instead of waiting and delaying until I grew my financial situation. Because say I did buy that new BMW at the average car interest rate of 9.63%, my monthly payment would have been $1,475 a month before insurance. And at that time, my 40K salary was about $3,333 a month. That meant the car alone would make my debt to income ratio 44% before even counting the student loans I had at the time. Now, why is that number important? Because most banks would not approve a house loan no matter what your income is if your debt to income ratio is 43% or higher. Which means if I had bought a car like all my buddies did, I would have never been approved for the first home loan, which meant I would have never rented out the rooms to live rent-free, which meant I would never have had the $50,000 profit when I sold the home, and which meant I would have never had the excess money from my job to pay off all my student loans that year, which thus meant I would have never had the cash to close on the 10 rental properties when I did. It was like a big domino effect looking back that I didn't truly realize what I would have given up if I had bought that nice car when I graduated. Which is why I'm pretty passionate when I talk about buying cars before people have invested in themselves, because I believe more wealth is killed through car purchases than anything else. Today, that 2015 BMW would now be worth about $30,000 according to Kelley Blue Book, and if you calculate that $70,000 purchase at a 9.63% interest rate for 60 months, I would have spent a total of $88,474, which meant I would have lost more than 66% of my money with one purchase. Not to mention the opportunity cost of all the investments I would have missed out on because I didn't have the money to buy them because I bought a car. And I know it's tough at that age to buy a clunker with all your friends or buying the newest cars, and then all your friends and family are telling you why you should buy the newest car. But remember, as long as you know that what you're doing has the potential to make your life better in the long run, nobody else's opinion should matter. And a great quote that I've heard from a real estate investor that I know that had a similar story, his quote says, "You don't have to look rich, you don't have to act rich, but you can just be rich, and that's fine." So a good rule of thumb to use whenever you go and buy a car to make sure that you don't fall in this money trap is to not finance it for more than 4 years, and to make sure that the total cost of that car per month to you, including fuel, is no more than 10% of your total monthly income. By following this rule, it's going to help you not to lose too much of your net worth to a depreciating asset, as well as going to help ensure that your car's value is never less than what you owe on that loan. So if you're an average American who makes an average salary of $51,916 or $4,326 a month, that would mean that your car payment and fuel should be no more than $432 a month when financed for 4 years. If you account for just $100 for fuel, which we both know is more than that usually, that leaves $332 a month for the car. Doing some reverse calculations, assuming a 10% interest rate, means that the average American should buy a car that costs no more than $13 in order to meet these requirements. And here are some examples of vehicles that meet that criteria that the average American should own that makes an average income of $51,000 a year. Notice all of these are used cars since I don't know of a new vehicle that is under $13,000 currently. Now I know none of these cars would probably ever make anyone's list on someone's dream sheet of best cars to have, but it's going to ensure that you don't put too much money in a depreciating asset and also make sure that it's reliable enough for you to get to work. And after seeing that, I know many of you are probably thinking, man, Simon, with how hard I work, I deserve a new car. And I would have to highly disagree with you. And that's because I believe that with how hard the average American works today, you deserve the new car and you deserve to be financially free, not just one or the other. I'm a big believer that you can have it all as long as you do things the correct way. And by applying the knowledge that you learned from this video as well as some of my other videos in my channel, you too can ensure that you get the best of both worlds just like I did. And it could happen a lot sooner than you think. But overall, when it comes to this money trap, it all comes down to knowing when to splurge on nice toys and when to start investing in your future. As for money trap number 4, we're going to talk about buying lottery tickets. Americans as a whole per capita spends $220 a year on lottery tickets. And not everyone in America buys lottery tickets, but out of the ones that do, a study at Bankrate showed that the average person that buys lottery tickets spends $1,038 a year, and the majority of buyers are individuals that make less than $30,000 a year. Now, I'm not saying that the occasional buying of a lottery ticket for like a birthday or a special event is bad, but actively participating in the lottery on a weekly basis is pretty much willingly accepting to pay an additional tax to the government. Why, you may ask? Well, because if you look up online what the funds from the lottery go to, you're going to find that it's very similar to what the normal taxes that are pulled from your paycheck go to, and only a small portion of this money actually goes to the winners. So now let's play with some numbers so I can better express to you why buying so many lottery tickets in your 20s is a money trap. Take the most popular lottery game, the Mega Millions Lotto. The chances of winning just $1 million, which is not even the grand prize in today's Mega Million lottery, is 1 in 12,607,306. And fun fact, you are more likely to die from a left-handed person who misused right-handed products than you are of winning $1 million in the lottery. That's kind of a weird statistic, but it actually exists. Now let's say you're the person that actually spends the $1,038 on lottery tickets, and say that each of these are $1 each. From the age of 25 to retirement age of 62, you would have spent $38,406 in lottery tickets over a period of 37 years. And if you do the math of 1,038 tickets for 37 years equates to 38,406 tickets purchased, which mathematically would increase your odds of winning the $1 million to 1 in 328. In other words, if you and 327 of your friends decided to spend $1,038 a year on lottery tickets till you retire, odds are only one of you would win the $1 million. The rest of you would have given a donation to Uncle Sam. Now let's say you were the lucky person that does win. You could expect after all the taxes are paid, you would get approximately $630,000, and that is assuming you were the winner. Now what if I told you I knew a way that could guarantee you to win $1 million? Would you do it? Here's how. Let's say instead of spending $1,038 a year on lottery tickets, you invested that same money in a 401k instead each year from the age of 20 to age 62. With a typical employer match of 6% and an annual rate of return of 10%, you would have grown that same money to $1,175,711 at retirement age. Even after taxes, it would be more than the earnings from the winning of the lotto. So to avoid this money trap, do yourself a favor and make your own lotto jackpot and put your money in a 401k as opposed to in lottery tickets. Now money trap number 5 is a bit controversial and for good reason, and that is moving out on your own too soon. Now I understand why many of us want to move out of our mom's house in our 20s because we want to get a sense of independence and also to be quote unquote a grown up while also gaining some responsibility by being on our own. However, after seeing a lot of my own family and friends trying to move out of the house at age 18, a lot of them realized after about 5 years how much it truly costs to be on your own and had to come back to their mom's house after paying all that rent and utilities to somebody else when they could have been helping their parents and their family with the bills. Or once they moved out and they never moved back in, they really struggled throughout their whole entire 20s trying to just keep a head above water, and they weren't comfortable enough until maybe in their mid 30s before they could buy their first home. When they could have just stayed at home for a few years in their early 20s, building up some money and some savings, that way once they do move out, they were starting at a much better foot. And with the study showing that by the age of 27, over 90% of all children attempted to move out of their mom's house at least once, but over 50% have to actually move back at some point. And a lot of us can relate to this because let's be honest, with inflation today going out of control and rent increases going up 40% in some parts of the country, it's becoming increasingly harder and harder for the average American to be able to make it on their own, let alone someone in their 20s that's just getting started. To better explain this, let's say we have two brothers at different ages. The eldest brother, his name is Gohan. When he turned 18, he was able to find a good job for his age that paid him $20 an hour, which equates to about $3,200 a month before taxes. And since this is probably the most money he has ever made up to this point, it makes him feel that he doesn't have to put up with his mom's rules anymore. And he storms out of the house and decides to live in his own and get an average apartment for about $1,500 a month. After you include utilities, food, gas, and his monthly bills end up being closer to about $2,200 a month. Now include a $200 car payment and $100 for insurance, and now Gohan's bills are $2,500 a month. Oh, and since it's his first time on his own making a decent wage, Gohan gets to experience the full extent of Uncle Sam, and he takes a cut from Gohan's paycheck. So now his $3,300 a month before taxes is about $2,800 a month, which leaves him with only $300 a month after all bills are paid, assuming he never went out to have fun with his money, and no minor unforeseen emergencies happen like a blown tire or a check engine light. And we both know those come up more often than we'd like. But now say Gohan is not the average American, and he is a super saver and has saves up all $300 a month that is left over from age 18 to 22. That would equal $14,400 after 4 years of working full time. And more likely this is not going to be enough to buy his own home when you account for closing costs, so he has to continue to rent for a longer period of time as houses get more and more expensive each year and rent goes up each year. Eventually the cost of living becomes way too much for him and he's forced to come back home like 50% of Americans do at some point. Now his younger brother, Goten, notices this, so he decides to take a different route. So Goten decided to stay with mom and dad and offered to pay all the utilities since he still wanted to have a sense of responsibility as well as help his parents. So using the same income as his older brother, Goten got the same $2,800 after taxes, and then after him paying $1,000 for mom's utilities and some of his own personal bills, will leave Goten with about $1,400 a month to pocket. Now say Goten is also a super saver because he wants to build his foundation as fast as possible so he can move out for good. He saved up $16,800 a year, and by the age of 22, he saved a total of $67,200. And not only did he save more than Gohan, he was able to help mom and dad pay some of their bills that they would have had to pay anyways, because just because you leave the house doesn't mean that your room certainly disappears. Not to mention the money that his parents saved up by him paying a portion of his bills, it helped them catch up on their retirement. So in a way this helped both his parents and Goten. And now at the age of 22, comparing the older brother Gohan, who was able to save $14,400 after 4 years, had to move back, while his younger brother Goten, who now has $67,200, who now has enough to make a down payment on his own home at the age of 22. Goten is in a much better financial situation to move as compared to that of his older brother, who was in a rush to get out and had to come back eventually. And I'd like to add the social acceptance of all this. If a 20-year-old is living with his mom, nobody really questions it or even thinks of it as uncool. If anything, it's almost expected nowadays with today's inflation rates. Now, if you try to move out at age 18 and have to come back eventually in your mid-30s, it's usually accompanied with a little bit more judgment from society, even though you tried to make it out on your own. And unfortunately, the real world is very unforgiving, and they don't care if you're 18 or 45. If you can't pay rent on time, more than likely you're going to have to move out and probably have to go back with your mom and dad in order to get back on your feet. So my suggestion with all this is that if your parents are fine with you staying, don't be in a rush to move out. Now, don't take this as a reason to slack off and just be at home playing Fortnite all day and never growing as an adult. But if you're choosing to stay home so you can build up your financial wings and you're not a financial burden to your parents, I'd say ride that train till the wheels fall off. Because if you do it right, you too will be able to buy your first home at the age of 23 or even younger, just like I did. And if you can do that, you will be a full decade ahead of your peers because the average age of the first-time homebuyer is actually 33 years old. And with the way house prices are rising, I'd say it's only going to be getting older. Not to mention the fact that after responsibly saving some money and building up your financial foundation over the years at your mom's house, you can feel confident that whenever you do decide to move out, that it's going to be permanent because you're in a much better financial situation in order to take on the world. So to avoid this money trap in your early 20s, I recommend staying at your mom's house just for a little while longer. That way you can build up a better foundation so that when you move out, you're ready to take on the world.
Mama said that. My mama said that. My mama said that. My mama said that. My mama said that.
Well, that's it, you guys, on my top 5 money traps to avoid in your 20s. Now, as you can see, there's a lot of money traps to avoid in your 20s. But hopefully you learned something in this video. That way you can avoid these money traps so you can ensure that you're going to live a bougie and glamorous and financially free lifestyle in your 30s. And if you got any value from this video, make sure to hit that thumbs up button and comment down below any additional money traps that you recommend us avoiding. As well as if you like this kind of content, make sure to subscribe so that you don't miss out on our next video, such as money traps to avoid in your 30s. And with that, you guys, are my 2 cents that I invest in you that I hope to continues to compound over time until we're all financially free. So until next time, Simon says, do as I say and have a great day. Thank you.